Welcome to the 11 a.m. session, Tracks Across Africa with Mike Reese, all the way from West Virginia, my home state. And a great story, background, this guy, he went to high school with me. And you know what a joy it is, not quite 50 years, but probably 45 so. And I'm just blessed to be his friend. He's very evangelistic. He's tracks across Africa is awesome because that's where he's been all over. Mike, it's your show now.
Thank you so much, Alan. Now, to answer your question, brother, yes, I am related to John Reese, but he lives in Chesapeake, Virginia, not the John Reese you know. Alan, words cannot adequately express my deep appreciation for you, our relationship, the invitation to be here, and this opportunity. I'm just truly humbled, and it's a joyful occasion for me. So thank you, brother. Thank you. Treasure our friendship. I want to preface my presentation with a couple of things. One, first of all, absolutely, wholeheartedly, to God be the glory. We are just messengers. We have this treasure in earthen vessels that the excellency may be of the power of God and not of us. We plant, we water, God gives the increase. Second, I just have the pleasure of going to Africa twice a year and delivering the message. It's an entire huge team of supporters, of prayers, of elderships that believe in this work. So I thank everyone for being a part of this. I thank you for being here. Africa is a weird place in many ways, an enigma in many ways. First went to Tanzania in 2005 and sort of gravitated up towards Kenya and into Kenya, split the time between the two countries for a couple of years. Kenya is about the size of Texas, 46 million people, gained its independence in 1964, in 63, became a country in 64. Wonderful, wonderful people, was a former British colony. You see the flag here. Black representing the people, red the blood, white the purity, green the fertility of the land. And then you have the Maasai crest there in the flag. Fulfilling this great commission. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I've commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen. We have one imperative that has the force of a command in the Great Commission, and that is to make disciples. And then in the original text, there are two participles that tell us how to make disciples. Baptize folks in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to observe all things that Jesus commanded. Now, I have a lot of slides, and I have to go through this fairly quickly, but if you have a question or a comment, we're not here just to finish. We're here to glorify God and to learn about a phenomenal work. And there's tremendous works going on around the world. This is just a very small part of it. So just raise your hand, we'll talk about it. But I've divided the Great Commission into how we approach this in Kenya into three different areas. The going and the making disciples, the baptizing, and the teaching. Now, let me say this. Haven't there been some phenomenal sessions in the past 2 days we've been here? My bucket is filling up. I mean, we just had phenomenal lessons that are just so applicable, practical. So what I want to do in this presentation is just show you how we, my team and I, have put all of this knowledge together and how we're trying to fulfill the Great Commission. I don't have my pointer, but about halfway down the continent of Africa you can see Kenya, right on the equator. I think my record for crossing the equator is 6 times in one day. That's the area that I'm working. Here is some of the areas that I'm going to be talking about today. Up north, you see the Chiwele Orphanage. We have a preacher training school there. Then we have the Kenya Christian Youth Camp, Ndwara, and then clear on down in southern Kenya is Masai Mara. I hope we get time to talk about that. I usually take 2 trips a year to Kenya. Evangelism begins the teaching or the making disciple process. And I'm going to integrate several of our partners in this presentation and just tell you how they have helped in the work that I do in Kenya. World Bible School correspondence courses. Roger, my dear friend Roger Chafin's here. We heard Brian yesterday, Brian Williams. And there are other ways of getting the word out. But when the pandemic hit back in January 2020, we had to close our 3 Bear Valley schools, our preacher training schools in Kenya. I coordinate those 3 and also technically the one in Arusha, Tanzania, but I'll leave it alone because they do such a phenomenal job. So we had to close our school in Kisumu, Kenya, and the guys went home, and one of our students at the time, Moses Simiyu Wambigliano, he couldn't just sit idly and do nothing. So we had sent, I think, a couple of pallets of World Bible School correspondence courses, both Swahili and English. So he took his friends, his team, and started distributing those, going back grading those, and then going back in and conducting gospel meetings. I'll tell you more about that. But since January 2020, he keeps meticulous records. He and his team have distributed and graded 14,678 World Bible School correspondence courses. Mission Printing out of Richland, Texas, ships 4 to 5 containers a year to third world countries. They've shipped technically 2.5 to Kenya, and I just got news as I was driving down, whatever day I come down here from West Virginia, that we're going to be able to get another container shipped in March of next year. And this container full of printed materials from Mission Printing, they allow us to piggyback books to our libraries at our Christian schools, but especially at our preacher training schools, the Bear Valley schools and other preacher training schools that I work with. You see, we've already taken some out of this, but the guys come in. This is a distribution center. The preachers come in, they get the preacher boxes that Mission Printing is so good to send, that has a Bible, maybe a couple of commentaries and some magazines, periodicals that will help those brothers out in the field. But also, this is used in evangelism, not only in Kenya, but we've had material go into Uganda. We have material goes into South Sudan, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, goes all over East Africa. What happens when we send religious material to someone in the United States? Now, House to House, Heart to Heart's phenomenal. I know many people read that, but just your average piece of literature, where do you see it? They have a trash can right in the post office because very few are read. On average, one piece of religious literature, at least in East Africa, is read 13 times. Eddie Clower, Truth for Today commentary, so gracious. 253 sets of the Life of Christ, the 2-volume set, to be distributed to every preacher and every preacher training student until they run out. And I think most of them have been distributed now. Here's a picture of some of the boxes of books that we have shipped to Mission Printing, and they got on the container. And now they're being distributed to our preacher training schools throughout East Africa, but especially in Kenya. And we found an economical way to do this. They have a bus system and we can put those boxes on the cargo section of a bus. And to ship, I think we shipped about 15 boxes all the way to Mombasa, which is a long, long ways from Kisumu, which is up in northwestern district region of Kenya. And we did that for about $50 US. Now, send something across the ocean by U.S. Postal Service and see how much it costs you. That's why World Bible School is going electronic in many ways. So we distribute these. Joseph Masundo, he's preacher out at Nyamasari. Got to tell you this story. Back in, I think it was 2014, maybe 2015, I had gone out in the field and was doing a Bible seminar / gospel meeting, and didn't even know that Joseph had walked along and was listening. Well, I think he came the next day. Long story short, I didn't even know this story until 5 or 6 years later. He found a local preacher there, studied, was converted, entered Christians for Kenya, which is a preacher training school that it's sort of between our Bear Valley schools and an adult Bible class on that level, but it does a good job of rooting and grounding these guys in the faith. He graduates from there, applies to our Bear Valley School, the Kenya School of Preaching in Kisumu, and I didn't know this until he graduated, right, the week of graduation. He's come up and he said, "Dr. Reese, I want to talk to you." And he smiled and he told me that story, that he was converted. Now, he's gone from just walking along the road, hearing a gospel message. Hebrews 11:6, without faith it is impossible to please Him, for he who comes to God must believe that He is, and He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Joseph was diligently seeking God. He found God, found salvation, found Jesus Christ, and now he's preaching the gospel and planting churches. That story is all over our third world countries, but especially in Kenya. Lucas Opondo, what a great man. I wish I had time to tell you about him. But here are the guys getting their materials, and when a container arrives, it's like Christmas morning to the nth degree to these guys, because they now have materials that they can use. Yes?
Why are they so much more responsive?
They don't have all the interference that we do. I believe that the parable of the seed and the sower, the Word of God is choked out in our culture. It's not that we're bad people, it's just we have so many distractions that we don't focus on the Word of God. Excellent question, and I have a rapport with these folks now that I can get by in saying this, and almost every time I go out into the field to preach, I tell them, I say, look, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not rich in your eyes, because I am materially. If you've eaten more than once today, you've eaten more than most of the adults. I know that for a fact. We're rich materially, but in many ways, our churches are poor spiritually. You are rich in faith. Don't trade for something that is going to last for eternity for something that's temporary. Don't strive to be like us. We need to strive to be like you. Excellent question. That's my opinion. Too many interferences. Anything else? Yeah. Christianity, quote unquote, hit the shores of Africa and Kenya through the Indian Ocean, through the Mombasa area in 1490 something. So you ask a lot of folks in Kenya, what are you religiously? And about 80 to 85% are going to identify as Christian. It's not New Testament Christianity, obviously. The Muslim and the leaders that be do not like the Muslims. For obvious reasons, the presence is there. Between 5 and 5:30 every morning from my motel in Kisumu, I hear the Muslim call to prayer. You know what I do during that time? Rather than letting that irritate me like it did for a few years, I now use that as a prayer time to God. So, Now, up in northern Kenya, the Westgate Mall in 2013 that was attacked by the Muslims at Al-Shabaab, I frequented that mall many times when I'd go through Nairobi, and it was seized for 7 or 8 days. Then over in Garissa, I've been close to Garissa where Al-Shabaab come in and kidnapped that girls' school. But for the most part, it's non-existent. Good question. Excellent question. Here you see one of our out in the field gospel meetings where they've received the World Bible School. Now, baptisms, let's move on. And again, to God be the glory. I did not have time to put everything in the presentation and get a total count of all the reports of baptism. I just want to talk about the Chiwele preacher training students. But since 2020, there have been well over 100 churches planted in this area. And like I tell the guys when I teach in the classes, I say, how do you feel if a man comes in and has a physical baby and then abandons that baby? You don't think much of him. I said, how hard is it to raise up your children to maturity to where they're responsible adults? That takes a lot of time, that takes a lot of effort. But you need to do it. So we now are in our second class of the Chiwele Preacher Training School. Of these men, we've taken one representative from each congregation or clump of congregations, and we're training them, and then they're going back and strengthening these congregations. So, okay. Since January 2020, I already mentioned this, 14,678 World Bible School correspondence courses distributed, graded. In 2022, just up in this area with our preacher training students going out and working, 138 baptisms, 7 churches planted. 2023, 601 baptisms, 36 churches planted. 2024, 338 baptisms, 19 churches planted. To present, 1,077 baptisms, 62 churches, and that doesn't count the ones pre-2020 that we would consider infant churches that we're working with. So God has truly blessed this area, and to Him be the glory. I'm going to go through, and I can't help but think John the Baptizer going up and down the Jordan River, he was there because there was much water, but I have a feeling in flood season it might have been dirty water, but you look at some of the water in which these people are baptized, and these are just very recent photos, just in the past month or so. And then there's going to be one pop up. That's at the east side, Church of Christ in Nakuru. They rent a room in a motel for their worship space, so they have access to a nice big baptistry that's called the motel swimming pool. We started back in 2012, the Kenya Christian Youth Camp. I looked around. The median age of Kenyans is 18 and a half years old. In other words, half the population of Kenya is 18 and a half and under, half the population is older. That's a very young country. Kids everywhere. Well, what can we do? Christian schools, Christian camps, and then train people to work with them. That's my 3 areas of work in a nutshell. So we had very successful camps. And then the pandemic hit. Nothing in 2020. 2021, the Kenyan government would not let us conduct a Christian youth camp. Oh man, I was disappointed. God's just blessed this. What do? We took the main congregations that had supported our youth camp, and we had what we would call a one-day youth rally simultaneously. August 28th, 2021, 1,402 young folks attending these various events all over Kenya, and God blessed us with 42 baptisms. The next year, we had permission from the Kenyan government, the health department, to do our youth camp. A week before I was to travel to Kenya, they shut us down. I was highly disappointed. We scrambled, and we I'm used to a pointer on this. This one doesn't work. So we, at this time, scrambled, did the same thing, 835 attendance, 44 baptisms. Then last year, oh my. How many of you have ever worked, attended, or been a part of a youth camp anywhere? Raise your hand. What's the largest? Have you ever, raise your hand if you've ever been to a camp that they had 200 that week, 300, 400, 500. Just tell me, Jerry. Okay. That's a phenomenal camp, isn't it? It's just like ants, cockroaches, everywhere. I'm using that figuratively, obviously. Well, we didn't know what we were going to have last August. I'll just tell you what we had. We had over 1,700 campers registered, and that doesn't count the ones that came and didn't register. And God blessed us with 110 baptisms. We're not going to have that large of a camp this year, I hope. That just busted our budget, and we just couldn't take care of them. But my, oh my, God's vision and our vision is totally different many, many times, most of the time. Okay, songbooks. I want to mention this real quickly. 3 things every new congregation asks for, new church plant: Bibles, songbooks, and chairs. Well, the first time we did Kenya Christian Youth Camp, printed several hundred songbooks. Next year, we had to print them all over. After about the 3rd year, I said, David, who is directing our camp now, I said, why do we have to keep printing these songbooks? He said, because they need them. I said, what do you mean they need them? They take them home. Can't we just use them over and over and over? Finally, about the 4th year, it hit me. I'm out in the field on a Sunday after camp closed. And I look, those girls were at camp. And then they had opened up a Bible. Those girls were baptized at camp. And then I saw the songbooks that they were using, and it was the songbooks from camp. The Bibles and the songbooks were the only Bibles and songbooks, basically, that congregation had. Guess what I did, Roger, after that? I zipped my lip, and from then on, we will print 1,000 songbooks if we need them. Campers began coming in, and what I tried to do, I think Gary this morning said that he attended, when he was a student at Ohio Valley College, West Virginia Christian Youth Camp when he was 17 years old. I co-directed All Age Week of West Virginia Christian Youth Camp for 25 years. Got tremendous experience. So we tried to replicate and duplicate our camp at West Virginia in Kenya, and for the most part we did. Same schedule, just right on down the line. A lot of good quality teaching in the morning, a lot of good fellowship, ladies' class. Difference in our camps here in the States and there is these folks are coming, first of all, from all over Kenya. Second, they rely on public transportation, very expensive for them. We go to camp, we drop our kids off, register them Sunday afternoon, and then the camp babysits them until you pick them back up Friday afternoon, Saturday. I'm being facetious, you know, but come and go. We're very mobile. Kenya, that's not the way it is. We had many of our parents staying, or chaperones staying for the whole week. So after the first year of camp, I said, okay, we're going to do a ladies' seminar, we're going to do a men's seminar for the adults that stay. So, very successful. Women, people who don't really know what Christianity has done worldwide and listen to blogs and things. There's many out there that think Christianity is evil. Every time, place, historically, where Christianity has entered into a culture, the role of women is elevated. The plight of women, I should say. Children, the underprivileged, the people that the rest of society overlooks. Basically, here's the pecking order in third world country. Men, children, animals, and women. So for us to take time and have women's seminars is phenomenal for them. So we do that every year at camp. We have men's seminars. We spend a lot of time in developing elders, deacons, qualification of elders, deacons. Then just the one this year, I'll be leaving, by the way, Lord willing, 2 weeks from today to head to Kenya. I'll teach a class at the Kenya School of Preaching, and then I will conduct camp, and I'll teach a series on spiritual growth, the fruit of the Spirit, from the book of Galatians. Okay, I got to get through this very quickly. We're sort of running out of time, but Masai Mara group, very colorful. Just love those folks. These are all men last year who attended the leadership seminar that have attended one of our either Bear Valley schools in Kenya or non-Bear Valley preacher training school. We now have a hall that'll seat 1,000 folks, and there was standing room only. And again, God blessed us with 110 baptisms. Now, moving on, how do we mature these folks? You got the gospel seed planted, they've been baptized, you got babies everywhere, you got baby churches. What are you going to do? We have 3 Bear Valley preacher training schools, and this is just the work that I'm involved in. There's other groups that are working there, other churches doing phenomenal work. We have the 3 Bear Valley schools, then we have the Chiwele Preacher Training School, a school down in Masai Mara, and now, just recently, we call it Milk to Meat, we have 5 of our alum from the Chiwele School of Preaching that the initial proposal, they're going to take 7 congregations each, and they're going to go at least once a month, take 3 Bibles and 5 songbooks to each new congregation initially. Well, 7 times 5 is 35, right? So technically we're working with 35 congregations. We started that the 1st of May. We're already up close to 60 that we are doing that with. So they're going in, they go from Wednesday to Sunday, intense teaching, preaching, even more evangelism. So that's how we're trying to mature these congregations. Here's a picture of the Kenya School of Preaching in Kisumu. Beautiful building, state-of-the-art. God has blessed us richly this way. And this is a full 2-year program, 46 core classes, 36 to 37 weeks in the classroom. We have to have our classes scheduled around the planting season because most of these men, they are subsistence farmers. That's how they feed their families. Bear Valley around the world now has 62 preacher training schools in 31 different countries, and Lord willing in September we will have 65 schools. And we have over 1,100 preacher training students. So that's part of that Bear Valley system. Now, this current class, and I've taught them, I think, 4, 5, 6 times maybe. But since they've been students, they started October of 2022, and they'll graduate, Lord willing, the 24th of August. I'll be there to speak the graduation. They have baptized 317 souls in 2023. That's while they're students full-time. 92 thus far in 2024, and restored numerous churches back to a New Testament mode of worship. Here I am teaching them the Gospel of John this past January. I have a really, really good library thanks to mission printing and hand carrying a lot of books over. Now, when the students eat their meals, and this started about 3 classes ago. This will be our 6th class that we've graduated in August, okay? So this started about 3 classes ago, I think. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. When the students go through the line and get their meals, before they even take one bite, they take a portion of everything that they have, a small portion, and they put it in on a large plate, a large platter. And then 1 or 2 of the students, after every meal, goes to the fence and see the picture of the fence? Those are underprivileged, orphan children from the village. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You think that's impacting those children getting food? Now, I intentionally, I guess if I do have a specialty, it would be Christian education. So when I first started going to Kenya, a lot of the classes just ignored, or a lot of the congregations ignored the kids. And you'd say, how many have in attendance today? They didn't even count the children. No classes, no nothing. The kids just were there. So I said, okay, we're going to solve that. We're going to put education program of the church in the core, 46 core classes that worldwide, all of our 65 schools have to teach education program of the church. Teach them how to organize and administer Bible class. Even if you have one or two teachers, that's fine. We're going to do classes. Okay, we fast forward. Here, actually, this is education program of the church. I might have taught that this past year. I can't remember. But anyway, these guys, in addition to learning how to do the lessons and put the lesson plans together, they have to have learning activities. You, sweet sisters, you know, what's the statistic? You remember 50% of what you hear, 70% of what you see, and 90% of what you do. Something like that. Well, here they are acting out in a learning activity how Jesus chose Saul of Tarsus to be a chosen vessel. And the one, the fellow there that's on the floor, he's almost my age. And he really got into this. He's struck down, and then you see the vessels on the floor. I say that have to be innovative, because when you go out into the field, you're not going to have a big budget. So they just found containers in the kitchen and poured water in them. So now let's fast forward here. For the past probably 5 classes, this is the Tiangre Church of Christ, which is the church that meets where our campus is in Kisumu for KSOP, and one or more of our students has taken it upon himself to have a children's Bible class. Normally they have somewhere between 35 and 45 in that class, village kids. Chapel every day. Here's our school down in Mombasa. Mombasa and Nairobi, different system. There are weekend programs. We have to have, for each Bear Valley class, we have to have 32 hours of time on task in the classroom. And they go 8 hours on either Friday night and Saturday or all day Saturday, 4 consecutive Saturdays, and that's one class, 4 years. Mombasa is scheduled to graduate this year, I believe. And this is Kamani John. Kamani's up in the Nakuru area. He was one of our students in the first class. And now he's teaching at our school in Mombasa. We have several of these guys doing this. This is our small library, Mombasa. Here we are at Nairobi. Met Dr. Denny Petrillo. He was in Cameroon. I was in Kisumu teaching, and we met in Nairobi to attend the graduation. And then he came up in January and taught Ezekiel Daniel, and I taught a graduate class. Talk more about that in just a moment. But here we are at our graduation, the first graduation of our school in Nairobi. Over 100 churches of Christ in Nairobi. You think they need some preacher training? Here we are handing out the diplomas. Now, just tell you what Bear Valley, just what our students have done. This is in 2023. We keep record of all of this. 62 preacher training schools, 31 countries, 1,108 preacher training students. In 2023, our students, while they're students full-time or part-time, baptized 4,359 souls. That's 12 a day, roughly. Planted 123 new congregations. That's a new church plant every 3 days, roughly. Is God blessing work? There's some phenomenal work going on around the world. Here I am down in Masai Mara at our graduation. Chihuele at our graduation. We're in our second class now at Chihuele. These guys are scheduled to graduate the 17th, Lord willing. Now, we're trying to replace ourselves. We got to get it to where if something happens and we can never go back, that they can just keep right on going. So we have several graduate programs in Kenya and Arusha, Tanzania. We take sort of the cream of the crop of our graduates from our Bear Valley schools and then teach them how to be teachers, basically. Here I am, 1st, 2nd Peter, and Jude. I think I had 9 students for that class, and all of them are teaching some way. Here we are distributing Bibles. There's always a need for Bibles. World Video Bible School. This is a projector that's self-contained, solar-powered. All you need is to get that thing out in the field, and every lesson that's ever been recorded in World Video Bible School, English, French, Swahili, Russian, is on 3 hard drives in that machine. I'm taking, Lord willing, 2 over with me this trip. And where they're used is out in the field by these guys, either in the preacher training schools, their evangelism. A couple of the guys go into public schools and use the projector. So, yeah.
How do you keep building the buildings financially, carpenters and so on? How do you keep it going?
There's one of my team members is over there now, Mike Jones. He left Monday. I haven't heard from him. I'm assuming Delta got him over there with all of their mess-ups. And I've turned everything basically over to him, but it's just constant. We have some donors that they want the buildings built. They know we need buildings. We're not there to build buildings, but you have to meet somewhere. What's that? We have to meet somewhere, so they understand that. They understand that. So, generous people, very generous people. And my work is all under the oversight of the Mannington Church of Christ elders. So we get contributions. It's earmarked for building. We have a couple of major donors that's just what they want to do. And we're very, very glad to do that. Very glad to do that. Yeah.
Are most of your instructors in the schools, are they locals?
Yes.
Like you said, that you train?
Yes. We tried to do that. The idea is don't bring these guys over here, but teach them in their culture. Just go in and I look at it as scaffolding. We're just helping them get on their feet to where all they need is resources. Like any culture, you have very, very bright people who want to teach, and the cream rises to the top. So we have a class. We'll start a new class October of this year, and we have right at 50 applicants already. Those that work with preacher training schools, how would you like to have 50 to 100 applicants for every class? And normally with a preacher training school, you'll have your first class is really good, second, third, maybe a fourth, and then they start going down. We're in our 6th class, and I'd put these current students against any. They're still doing a phenomenal job. So the idea is get these guys trained and then train the ones that have the ability to learn how to teach others. Absolutely. And we save some of maybe the more difficult classes for some of the American guys that go over. Like Denny Petrilla. I mean, Denny goes over and teaches Ezekiel Daniel. And I hope he hears this someday. In all honesty, he stuck me with that here 2 years ago, and I had to teach it. I forget what happened. I think it's pandemic. But try teaching Ezekiel Daniel in 32 hours. But Denny wrote the Truth for Today commentary in the book of Ezekiel. That's the quality of teaching they're getting. I have a doctorate of education from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. I'm teaching education program of the church. So these guys are getting good quality instruction, I hope. And then they take that, and part of my responsibility as coordinator is to make sure that, first of all the short course teachers, whether local or from abroad, are qualified and they have to sign a doctrinal statement. And then I spot check periodically to make sure that All of the classes are being taught to Bear Valley standards, according to our standardized syllabi and class notes. Excellent question. Anything else? Again, material just goes all around. This is Wesley Core. Wesley is a Kalenjin. The problem is, about 4 years ago, he was a member of the wrong branch of the Kalenjin. So they tried to kill him and his family, burned his house, destroyed everything he owned. He just escaped literally, ran up into the woods and hid. He and his family had to relocate. Well, he relocates. We get him set back up with clothes, mattress, etc., seed so he can plant. He is just doing remarkably well. Since that time, he has 16 congregations that they've either planted or have been restored to New Testament Christianity, and he's taken one representative out of each of those. And I wish I could be there, but the first weekend that I'm in Kenya, he'll have a graduation, 2-year program, and he's doing that basically on his own funding. I send him about $45 a month out of my general fund to fund that. Stories like that all over. Train up a child in the way he should go. We looked at the Christian schools, the Ahono Tumaini School, Luanda Christian School. Going to go through this very quickly. I've got about 4 minutes left. Okay, so we started our school in May of 2011. $200 from one of our coal miners at where I preach, and he said, "Here, do something with this." So we bought little plastic chairs, tables, and started a preschool in May of 2011. We now have 400 students, preschool through the equivalent of our freshman year of high school. We are rated the #1 school out of 64 in Western region. And this is our facility. And we have 2 people who have very generous hearts. And if you can see what they've donated to build this building, basically. Let me back up here. This is at lunchtime. Just some of our students, state-of-the-art library. One thing very quickly. Stop and think of how cool it is. These Maasai, these are Maasai, true Maasai. I mean, you're not going to get any more remote area in the world than Masai Mara. And these folks now are coming in and using our library and our computers in our library and learning about Jesus. We have an agricultural program that we work with through Healing Hands International. This is our school in Luanda. Don't have time to tell you about Tom, but Tom's phenomenal. Was converted in 2007 at a 3-day Bible seminar that we did. He went to our Bear Valley School in Arusha, came back, planted the church in his hometown. They planted several other churches, and he started a Christian school. We're working on the infrastructure there now. We have a new church building built, and Michael Jones, who's over there now, we're going to put classrooms for his school all across the back. Pandemic in March of 2020, when Moses, Samio, and Bigliano went home, they started bringing orphans. You ask someone in Kenya, how many children do you have? You'll get this answer, usually. Something to the effect of, I have 7. 4 natural born and 3 that I'm raising. Usually due to AIDS or typhoid or just some disease. Family members have died, so if they have resources, they take relatives or friends' children. During the pandemic, it was really rough out in the villages getting food. So these folks, their children were starving to death, and they said, we can't feed other people's children, so they brought them to Moses and his wife. And finally, at 39, I said, we got to stop. We can't do any more. They'd start cooking at 9 in the morning, finish up 9 at night. So we built dorms. We drilled a well. We got them a kitchen. There's the dorms. We are raising funds to pay school fees, which is very expensive. And those children are thriving. Several of them have been baptized, the older ones. Just last August, we started a widow sewing project. We took 9 of the area widows. We bought sewing machines, And Moses' wife, Justin, is a seamstress, and she's teaching them how to sew. And then that program, they'll have their sewing machine be able to support themselves. Okay, I already talked about milk to meat. I got to wrap this up. Here they are going out in the field. We're doing Bible seminars out in the field, marriage seminars. This is the precursor to the $5 meal at KFC. Masai Mara, they were sitting on these rocks for about 7 hours waiting for me to arrive on a gospel meeting. The process. We plant, we water, God gives the increase. Pretty simple, isn't it? That's our work in Kenya. Wish we had more time. Thank you so much for being here. My time is up, but do you have any questions or comments?
Thanks for what you're doing.
Well, to God be the glory. I just feel so honored to be a part of it. Thank you for taking your time to be. Yeah, Roger.
Some of the buildings that you're building over there, what's the average cost in Kenya?
Okay.
Of what that would cost us compared to here?
It's very expensive. It's honestly just about the same.
Is it really?
It really is, yeah. There's a church building there in the Dwara, for example. It's just a small, simple structure, and by the time we got it built, it was somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. Now that school building, there's no way we could even start building that Ahono Tumini school building now. I mean, it should be cost prohibitive.
The first ones you ever built were only like 50.
Yeah, the first ones we built were just like a pole building, just timbers and tin, and maybe put a concrete floor. We could build those for about $1,500, $2,000. But then after about 5 years, termites found the wood, and then we said, well, let's use metal posts. So we go 2 by 2 by 2 metal posts. Then after a while, the cost got up. It's just better just to try and build them a semi-permanent structure. And so, good question.
Primarily using cement blocks.
3 different ways on our permanent buildings. There is cement block, there's brick, and then there is the cut stone.
What is it?
Cut stone. Just hewn stone, just stone. Cut stone, just, yeah. Like back during the Depression in West Virginia, the WPA, a lot of the buildings were built out of sandstone. So that's the 3 major building materials. So, okay. Thank you all. God bless you. To God be the glory.